Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod Barbecue. On this episode, we have a gentleman by the name of Josh Welton. Now, Josh, man, if you're not following Josh on Instagram or going to his website, Brown Dog Welding, you are missing out because not only is he a fabricator, but he is one hell of an artist, one hell of a nice guy. And some of the stuff that he fabs out of metal is kind of mind-boggling to me. This guy thinks in three dimensions in a way that most people can't fathom, and I'm always blown away. Not only when I talk to him because he's such a wonderful guy, but just seeing his artwork. But as you all know, before we get into anything, we go to the Hemmings Classifieds, of which we have 25 to 30,000 cars at any given time. Or go to our Hemmings auctions, see the best cars out there that you can bid on and hopefully own because, well, that's why they're up for auction, and check it out. But for this particular gentleman, I wanted to find a vehicle that kind of suited him or that I thought might suit him. And so I did a little digging. And what I came up with was this 1946 Dodge Power Wagon. Now, the Dodge Power Wagon of that era, these were like everything from military ambulances to cargo vans to basically everything. They were used by municipalities. They were pretty much the go-to truck to get anything and everything industrial done. This one's special because not only is it a wicked power wagon, but it's a 6x6. I've never seen one that was a 6x6 before until I came across this. It's got a wicked Cummins turbo diesel engine, 4-speed manual. Everything has been redone. The paint is like Dodge Destroyer gray over black with black bead lockers. It's just a wicked thing. I think when Josh looks at this, he's going to go, okay, yeah, that kind of works for me. So check out this 6x6. We'll be back in a few seconds with Josh, and we'll talk to you real soon. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hemmings Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast. This week we have Josh Welton from Brown Dog Welding. And if you are not familiar with his work, dear God, people, you need to go to Instagram and check out his stuff under Welder Assassin, because aside from being a fabricator and a sculptor and, well, just everything else, his stuff is some of the coolest stuff I've ever seen made out of metal. So, Josh, thank you so much for coming on the barbecue, man. We've been trying to put this together for a while, and I'm so happy we finally got to make it happen.
Likewise, I appreciate you having me on, and thank you for the kind words.
Dude. So how did you first get into welding? How did metal fabrication come about? What was your, did you go to school for this? Were you like, I always wanted to be a fabricator? How did this happen?
I wanted to be a fabricator. Like, I had my mom's dad and then my dad were both jack of all trades, master of all trades, like did everything. From my grandpa was an engineer, but he ran a farm. My dad built a 4,000 square foot log house when he was, in his mid 20s. Plus he was a sheet metal shear operator. And I grew up not wanting anything to do with any of that. I hung out with them out in the shop, and I would, give them a hand. And I think through osmosis, I learned a work ethic, but the actual getting my hands dirty part, so I went to college. I went to college to study for Christian studies and psychology. That's where my head was at. I was in that generation where I was the oldest of 9, and my grandpa was always passed over for promotions because he didn't have a college degree. He had done his engineering in the Army, and so it was, you're the firstborn, you're getting into college, you're paving the way, and I hated college. I hated school. I just didn't like being in school. It wasn't for me. And but I met my wife there. I met some of my best friends there. And Darla's dad was the millwright instructor for Chrysler. So he was running the training program. And she always kind of, said, hey, if you want to do this, you can get into this. And we got married. I moved out to California. Then when we got married, she moved out there with me. We were out there for about 1.5 years, and we came back here, and I got the call to go in the apprenticeship program as a millwright. And my grandpa actually goes, he's like, don't you have to have some kind of mechanical aptitude to do that? But I I ended up loving it. And I had gotten into factories before then because my dad worked at Steelcase and they had a summer help program. So kids that were going to college could come in and earn money for school. And it's supposed to be kind of a two-part thing. Like part of it was helping families pay for school. And the other part was, hey, kid, you don't want to work in a factory for the rest of your life, so do good in school. But it had the opposite effect on me. I got in there and I was like, this is awesome. Like, I don't know what it was about it. Just the smell of oil and machinery, you know, the sound of machines buzzing and the thumping on the ground of the presses. And I loved it, and I was good at it, just the various different things in the factory. And so that kind of ended up being, you know, the way my life went. But I didn't start welding till I was 24. That's when I got into the apprenticeship program at Chrysler. And as a millwright, welding was a big part of the job. And that was the part of the job that I absolutely fell in love with. I worked with a handful of guys that all came from different backgrounds. So I was at the 3.7 engine plant, the engine assembly plant. We were, it was maintenance, but it was a little bit, I hate saying maintenance because that to me almost sort of trivializes it. It was skilled trades work. We did everything in the factory. And I had these guys that all had different backgrounds that were willing, because I came in with, hey, I want to eat this up. I want to learn what you guys know. And almost all of them to a man took any time that I needed. They came over and asked, like, there was one guy, he had a lot of experience working in scrap yards and torching metal and doing stick welding. Another guy had tool rooms welding skills where you're welding like tool and different kind of exotic metals. And then we had a training center there. And like the one guy at the training center, they liked when I came because a lot of the guys, the UAW Chrysler guys would go up there and it'd be kind of like a week off. And as an apprentice, I wasn't necessarily supposed to go there yet, but nobody else wanted to. And the guy in the plant that scheduled it was another millwright. So he would put me in with these guys. So right away, I was getting this training from the guys in the factory and then going to this school to learn from these other guys. And just as an example, the dude who taught me how to walk the cup, he was 72 and he'd been welding since he was 17. You can't buy that kind of experience. So for those guys, for me to be able to soak up, it was the perfect storm. And it was a traditional apprenticeship. So it was 8,000 hours of work. And then the schooling, I had the 8,000 hours done in 2 years. Like we were working 7/12s nonstop. The schooling took about 2.5 years, but it kind of messed me up later on because I think sometimes when you learn a certain way, you think that's the way it should be done. Sure. And the internet, the interweb came along and YouTube became the place where everyone wanted to learn how to weld. And I was like, don't know what you don't know. Like you have to do some certifications so you know what works and what doesn't. You know, these hot rod builders that lay pretty dimes. Have you ever broken anything, like to see how it breaks, where it breaks? But I kind of missed the boat on it because there's this new information age has brought about some really skilled welders that have learned, like the internet's opened up this whole, it's like a flood of information and you can find whatever. So before there'd be these isolated guys who could do these really intricate welds and these different types of techniques. You put it on Instagram, all of a sudden it's global and everyone's doing it. And I think it's really, in welding, I'm sure it's happened in other trades, but obviously I'm a welder, so that's what I pay attention to. And the iron sharpen iron thing is, it couldn't be more apt in this situation. Like Instagram, YouTube, we've created a generation of phenomenal metal crafters and welders, and guys are getting back into blacksmithing, and it's pretty cool. It's a really cool thing to be a part of.
So let me ask you this. So when you started welding, you said you went through this apprentice program, right? Now, a lot of people, like, college is not for them. You know what I mean? And I was probably one of those people. Like, yes, I went to school, but I probably should have done something else. Like my grandfather was a machinist, right? And in his basement in Brooklyn, his entire basement was a machine shop. And it was like, I remember, and I've told the story before, but I remember like breaking parts on like a remote control car. And my grandfather just going, "Oh, we'll just go make it." Like, I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "We'll just go downstairs and make the part." And I'm like, "You could do that?" And we did that. And he'd put it on his lathe and he'd mill out a little part, whatever. And boom, and it was fixed. And it's when you're young, you don't really, you see that. And, you know, but there are other factors that kind of push you in another direction. I think a lot of it was the same thing, right? You're the first one, you go to college, you get your degree, whatever the case is, right? But in the time in which we live right now, I think all of these skills, to be a fabricator, a welder, a metalsmith, those are skills that I feel like are difficult to come by to find somebody that talented. Do you find that it's difficult? Do you find like if you're looking for people to do it, or do you feel like it's like you had mentioned, it's because of YouTube and because of social media, it's really kind of catching on? Do you feel that that's the case anymore? Or do you feel like almost like, oh my God, there are so many people doing this now and so many great artisans out there that we're in good shape?
There are people, we're in good shape as far as the skill base goes. We don't have a skills gap. We have a wage gap. We have, and
Gotcha.
this was before the pandemic, it was an issue. Now the pandemic's really bringing it to a head with more than just the skilled trades industry, with, with everything. But we have in this country since 1979, we've let wages grow stagnant. Like we're down like 12% in real like uh, earnings, spending
Mhm.
power. And you got people who are like, it's nice to go to school 2 years and come out making, and you don't make what the schools say you make. And there's some,
Of course.
actually, there's some schools now, there's some welders that have started schools that they're very upfront with their students. They give their students a really good education. But when you've got the American Welding Society and like Tulane University or Tulsa Welding, I think it's Tulsa, saying, you're going to graduate making 60 grand a year, like, no, that doesn't happen. That the
Right.
average start salary is around 20,000. The average salary for a welder is just over 40,000. The guys that make
Wow.
100,000 are in the like the 5th percentile or something. So and even that, like, as I was coming up, $100,000 was like, all right, that's a cool mark, but we're still using that mark, and it's so diluted
Right.
now. So I've seen more guys that really know what they're doing, and they're like, I'm gonna go be a chef, or I'm gonna,
Right.
it's another creative endeavor, but the work, the physical toll it takes on your body, the work you put into it, and you've got this corporate structure that says you're only worth this, and if we can't get somebody to work this, we're just going to we'll work for this, we're going to close. Like there was there's always manufacturers like to put in so I feel lucky because I write for the Fabricator, and it's FMA, and it's a manufacturing association. Like it's an advocate for industry. But they let me speak out against industry because you've got people and companies that are putting a ton of money into these blitzes saying, hey, we can't find people to work for this. And then they try to get the government or programs to train people. They try to get things subsidized. And the reality is there are people out there willing to do it. You've just got to back the truck up a little bit, pay them a little bit more. I think we have, one of the things I set out to do with the Still Building America blogs that we started doing was showing that the younger generation are still willing to get their hands dirty. They're still willing to do that hands-on work, whereas a lot of people said that wasn't true. As I started traveling, whether I was doing art shows or traveling for work, and I'm seeing all these kids come up to me, and it's really cool right now. I mean, I feel like I've been doing this almost 20 years now, but I have kids coming up saying, hey man, I met you at the show and I'm a pipe welder or whatever. And I don't see a shortage anywhere. Like certain pockets, it's going to be hard to find somebody. But you have to consistently make it worth it for the employee to keep doing that job.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. So you, as a fabricator, I mean, you obviously do fabrication for, give me an example of what type of work. Like what would somebody come to you and say, like, Josh, I need this done. Like, give me an example of a job that would come into your shop.
Well, typically I just do what I want to do. Like I do sculptures. If I'm friends like Ralph Gilles with his Alpha race car, I've welded on almost every one of those, whether it was like a little exhaust bung or like when Road and Track had that Caterham, Sam Smith stuff to weld onto the exhaust, like stuff like that I'll do. Typically though, I'm doing sculptures in my shop. I'm starting to get into more furniture. We're starting to do some training classes. We started that last year. Kind of the timing sucked, but the classes were really, really fun. I like doing that. But for the most part, I'm doing my art as
so how did that start? Because the artwork that you do is simply it's just outstanding. I mean, it's so fun to watch. It's so fun to see the final products come out. But how did that, and you're making stuff that out of metal that is unbelievably intricate. stuff that I look at and I'm like, man, like I can't even like forget putting stuff together and welding. Like I can't even draw a stick figure. So thinking about that, those type of shapes in 3 dimensions, and then being able to fabricate it out of metal is simply mind-boggling to me. So how did that come about?
It was a process. Like I think some of it is in the genes. Like I have 3 brothers, and 2 of them went to art school, and the third, we kind of joked around about him not having any artistic ability. And then when my dad passed, he went woodworking, and now he's doing this amazing woodworking. So I think there's something to that. Like my mom is an artist, and but it was the typical, like, I want to weld stuff. I'm at Chrysler. We're working 712s, and usually during production, we're not doing anything. In case the line goes down, they need us to be able to go right then. So we're not getting into big projects during the day or during production day. So I'd sit at the welding bench and I'd start running beads, and then all of a sudden you start just putting stuff together. And then I worked with motorcycle guys. So they're like, hey, can you make a motorcycle? So that's how that started.
Yep.
And I've just done 200 motorcycle sculptures now, and I've never ridden a motorcycle. I always felt like a poser, but
Really?
I talked to guys who are like legit motorcycle guys who are like, no, you get it. You get the visceral appeal. You get the
Oh, dude.
aesthetic.
I've been riding motorcycles for 30 years. So I will tell you straight up, you get it. Like there's no question that you bring you bring the motion in a still object to it, which is so hard to do.
But if you look at my, like when I started doing this, and it had to be like, I started at Chrysler at 2002. I started kind of messing around with, I was making my grandpa tractor. I have it now after he passed. I got it. It's a John Deere, and like everything works, like the steering works and the wheels work. You go through this process as an artist. Like I was like, I want to make this thing, but everything has to work. And then it became, I want to make this thing, but it's got to be like, I started like, I didn't have an artist perspective. I was trying to rush through things. So I'm like, well, if this sucks, I can be like, I made it in 2 hours, you know?
Right.
And got to a point where I have to slow myself down. Like I work kind of like my buddy, Matt Trombley used to do, he's a photographer, and he used to come over and do a lot of stuff with me.
Yeah.
And he did a video of me making a motorcycle one time, and I'm like, why did you speed it up? And he's like, you always look like a monkey on acid. Like that's how you work. So I had to slow myself down, and that helped me get to the point where I was always afraid of saying I was an artist. I'm a welder. You know, I'm this skilled trades guy. I didn't want artist attached to my name. When I finally got over that and decided, okay, I'm gonna try to take this to the next level. That helped me immensely. And then it's imagination. Like it's hard to explain. Like you have a foggy image of something like Plato's perfect forms. Like you see the shadows in the caves, and you have this blurry conception of what it is. And until it's done, I have a hard time seeing it. But as it comes together, I used to always be really nervous. Like, is this one going to suck? Is this one going to suck? And then after you do a few and they don't suck, you're like, okay, I know it looks like it's going to suck now, but when I'm done, this is going to look really cool. And then honestly, taking pictures of stuff really helped me, because when you're doing 3D sculptures, it's easy to get lost in one profile and one perspective. So as I was trying to take cool pictures of sculptures, and I'm like, man, I got to work really hard to make this cool. Maybe it's not that cool. Like, all right, as I'm welding this, I've got to spin it around. I've got to move it around in mine, move it around on the table. Look at it. I did a 73 Porsche Carrera RS, and I got done with it, and I'm like, shit, it's not wide enough. Like I got so stuck in this one angle. And so I finally got to the point where I'd done some that I wasn't happy with. And now I know I can't go on unless I'm happy with it. So I just cut it right down the middle, and I just made the proportions better. And so it's been a process. Like, and I'm nowhere near a finished product, but I physically can't put in the hours that I used to do. And then with my current job, I'm all over the place. So it's been kind of hard to get out to the shop as much the last couple of years, but I'm trying.
So what are you doing now for your current job?
I work for General Dynamics Land Systems in their prototype shop. So we build prototype military vehicles. GDLS builds the Abrams tanks. So like when new versions of that come along, we develop the parts, fabricate the parts. Right now we're building this tank. If you look it up, You look up GDLS MPF. It's this new tank we're building for the military. It's a lightweight, lots of cool materials in it. It's got a badass drivetrain that I'm not sure if people know what it is, so I'm not going to say it. Like there's pictures of the vehicle on the internet. There's not yet.
Sure.
Not so much, but we built a bunch of those. We're testing them right now. I was the second person to get a drive one, so that was pretty cool. Like maybe in years I'll look back. So there's a guy that I work with who came in to fire the vehicles. He's a master gunner and this old timer. So I started talking to him about the first tanks that he worked on, and he starts going through the list. And I don't know if you've read any of my stuff on the on Arsenal Democracy, and I dig that stuff. So he starts talking about these tanks that he's driven, and then he says the XM1 or the XM1 or XMT, which was the prototype Abrams that Chrysler built in the late 70s. Wow. And I'm like, you drove that? And he's like, yeah. He's like, there's always been that thing out there where the vehicle will do 72 miles an hour, but it's governed because it'll rattle your bones apart. And he's like, yeah, I was driving it. We got up to 72 and the track went out and I couldn't stop for a half mile because the brakes are, you don't have the track, you don't have brakes. I'm like, right, bro, like this guy has this incredible history with these. I don't know. It's cool running into those kind of people and having people with that kind of background. I mean, the knowledge that they have, and then just you get to touch that little part of history, which is I got a kick out of that. So he's been working with us on that program too, which is cool.
Have you been finding that? Because I mean, again, we kind of always hear that, especially out here, like in Northern California at the racetracks and stuff. Like I have friends that are welders and they're fabricators on race cars and stuff, and they're always saying that they can't find anybody. They can't find anybody to work with them, and they can't find anybody that's skilled.
It's difficult. Oh, go ahead.
And no, but that's kind of their biggest gripe. It's like, we'll find people, but they don't want to put, like you said, you did an 8,000 hour apprenticeship, right? Yeah. So is it, do you
hours a week is what it equates to?
That's a lot. That's huge. So, I mean, is it, do you think people are willing to put the time? Because yes, obviously we have fabricators and we have skilled craftsmen out there, but do you think people want to put that much time in and really learn, and really do they really understand the concept of putting an internship in that much time?
I don't know that. I mean, I got paid for it. Like I did. It was easy for me because I was getting paid to work. I was getting paid to go to school. And then as I turned out as a millwright, I made exactly what all the other millwrights did. So it was pretty easy call for me. I know everyone's situation is a little bit different. I think people are willing to. The timing is, so we have to start making kids in like middle school aware of this stuff, because what we do right now is we say, oh, you're not good at math, or maybe you read words backwards or whatever, you're going to shop class. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when it's thought of as lesser than, and a lot of it is parents wrap their heads around, you can have doing this. But if somebody doesn't have any experience doing that, and then they're 18, 19, and they're like, well, I'm going to go to trade school. How do you know you're even going to dig that? So if you have that, I don't want everyone to become a welder or a machinist or skilled tradesman, but there are people right now that are working in a 9-to-5 cubicle job that if they would have been presented with this early on, they would have loved it. And then there are other guys who, if you would have tailored the education a little bit better towards them, maybe they wouldn't be a welder, maybe they'd be an accountant. It's our education system is broken. I think the people are willing to do it. What you're talking about with shops, it is hard to find employees that'll show up on time, that'll do the work, that want to have the patience to learn, or they'd even already know something. But on the other hand, nobody wants to work for $10 an hour, and nobody wants to work for, like, if I had to pay for my own healthcare, that's a big reason I still work for the man right now. Is we have healthcare. I have major health issues. My wife's going through some stuff right now. Like, we would be beyond bankrupt if we didn't have healthcare provided through the 9-to-5. Like, I think probably 2013, 2014, I was thinking about going out on my own. And then I had the weird arm stuff pop up. So I had a bunch of surgeries on it. It's like, man, I can't give up the healthcare. Like, that's a big worse. And I have friends that own shops, and they have a hard time finding people. And it's this rock and a hard place because they can't afford to pay, because they don't want to raise their prices more, but people aren't willing to work. So at some point there has to be something that happens, something that gives, where it's like, okay, we're going to have to pay more for this. Like, you can't just look at the cost, which is what a lot of shops do.
Right. So let me ask you, when you're welding, do you still really enjoy it? Do you really enjoy the sculptures and the creative process? Is that like so you go to work, you're working all day. When you get back, you just like, oh, I should probably go in the shop for a couple hours. Like, is that part of your free time? Is that how you decompress? Is that part of it?
I don't have free time. Like, it's every minute is either bought or paid for. Like, it's either a mental break for you. And I had to get that into my head when I started this, working 7/12s, putting 40 hours a week into this, like working 120 hours a week. Once I had the surgeries, I had 4 major arm surgeries. I had screwed up tendons. Like, I was working with torn ligaments and didn't even know it. That kind of put a break on things for a while. And I started feeling like emotionally, I was either depressed or felt guilty that I wasn't out at the shop working. So I'm working like we work a ton of overtime at GD. Like last year, it was basically mandatory 7-day work weeks. And then I come home and I feel guilty for not doing something. And it's like, at some point you got to take a break. At some point you got to let your go. But as far as welding goes, like right now at the day job, I'm technically, most of my career I've done fabrication, but technically I'm a driver mechanic. So right now I'm wrenching, and I don't mind it, but I'd still rather be back in the shop running beads. Like there was a time I was back there at lunch doing something, and one of the newer guys came back. They're like, "Why is Josh Welton on his lunch break?" And the guy's like, "You got to ask, you don't get it." Like,
right.
I just like, you put the hood down and you just lay. It's zen for me, and I don't get to do it enjoyably as much as I used to. Like, I think there's been times where I've needed to take breaks just from a creative standpoint, where I either get overwhelmed or I just don't feel like. I had my shop robbed in late 2016, and I didn't want to look at anything welding related. Right. Write anything. I didn't want to do shit for a while. And that's one of the reasons I went to Iraq that summer. It was just like this mental getaway. Yeah. And came back, and right now I'm back to having more ideas than I have time to make things for. And I'm hoping I get a chance to, but at the same time, like Monday, I'm leaving to Arizona for 3 weeks for work. So it's really hard to get into any kind of cohesive, like, routine, doing stuff with that kind of schedule.
So as far as the sculptures, are those mostly commissions? Do you do them for pleasure, or like, how, if somebody wants to get a sculpture done, how does that process come about?
They message me, they email me, or my wife. There are times where I'll do stuff just because I want to do it, but most of the time, the stuff I'm doing is either commissioned or it's sold before I'm done with it. The difficult part with the sculptures, like, one of the questions people always ask me is about the pricing. That's a road you have to go down individually. Like, I was at so when I started, like, the bikes would be $30, then it was $40, then you people that want to really barter with you, so I just bumped it up, and it got to the people who had a disposable income and they weren't bartering over $5 or $10.
Yeah.
And the last bike I did, I sold for $3,000 or something like that.
That's fabulous.
Process of your art develops, and you develop a relationship with kind of the industry, or the hot rod people and the motorcycle people. So that was a really weird answer to your question, but
no, it wasn't actually. It actually wasn't, because I think that's a process that a lot of artists, a lot of sculptors have to go down. Yes. And that they, I think there's, it's kind of like anything else, right? It's like when you talk to somebody about getting a paint job on the car, right? It's like, well, if you don't understand body work, like, the body guy is not going to look at you and be like, it's $2,000, because they don't know what it's going to take until they dive in. And I think
board ever and look in the body shop threads.
I mean, it's just like, and I get that all the time. Like, I know, like, if somebody comes up to me and be like, yeah, I went to this body shop and I got quoted 10 grand for a paint job. I'm like, dude, 10 grand is nothing for a good paint job. Like, and they look at you and they're like, yeah, but you just sprayed on. And I'm like, I can't even have this conversation with you. You know what I mean? So that is, I don't think your answer was off base at all. I think people have no concept of the amount of
None.
time, the amount of talent, the amount of education, the amount of skill that goes into doing something
It's
like that. They
hard.
have no clue.
It's your particular thing too. It's not. It's one of one. Like every sculpture I do is one of one. I would like to. I did one of Jonathan Ward's Broncos, and I scanned that, and I'd like to make a mold and do some bronze castings. That was actually one of his ideas, and I've just never gotten around to do it. But I would dig doing that. But everything I do is one of one. So you're getting the only one that's out there, and the people that get it. The other people kind of hem and haw. And my favorite thing is when I don't do as many shows anymore because most of the artists that do shows, they can sell prints or they can sell reproduction, like less of things. Everything I have is original. So most people don't come to car shows looking to drop $4,000 on a sculpture. But when I was doing it and I was figuring out the pricing and stuff, what I loved was when one guy would be complaining about it and the guy behind him is like waving his checkbook or his credit card in the air, like, I'm taking that. You just got to find that it's worth what somebody's going to pay you for it.
Yeah, well, listen, that's what anything, right? Talent will bring success, right? And I think that, like I told everybody before, like to follow you on social media is really such a joy because what happens is you go on and the stuff that you put out gives everybody else ideas. Like it does to me. Like I look at that and I'm just like, Jesus, and you do little things that are really, really neat. And it boggles my mind because you do them in metal. So like you'll put up a sculpture of like a Bronco or an off-roader with its wheel tilted up and like the axle cut. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like I don't think in 3 dimensions, so I can't fathom even doing that. And yet you're sculpting it out of metal. What? Say again? Absolutely.
Yeah. So you were talking about things being intricate, and one of the comments I get a lot is it's so detailed, but it's not. It's the illusion of detail. Like if you really look, if you wanted to get into the minutia of looking at these sculptures, there's not a lot of crazy detail. It's you want somebody to look at it and then their eyes fill in the spaces. Like I did a flat tracker and there's no spokes, so like your eyes automatically go to the wheels are moving. There's movement in the wheels. But even with that piece, like do you know Tom Fritz? He's an incredible artist. He's based out of California. Love that guy. But he's always been like the first time I met him, a couple of friends introduced me to him, and then he spent like 45 minutes just ripping my sculptures apart. And I'm like, and halfway through, he's like, I hope you don't mind. If I didn't like these, I would have just been like, oh, that's cool, and turned around and walked away. But instead, he took the time to go through these, and like he was talking to me like Yoda. Like he didn't want to give me any direct answers because he said, if I tell you how to do it, then it's my idea. It's not yours. If I tell you the direction that I think you should go and you fill in the blanks, then you've made it yours. And I would get that a lot with my sculptures. It's always like, well, how did you make the wheels? Or how did you make this? Or how did you make that? I've made them 100 different ways. It's all about taking what you have and making them fit your end vision. And I've had a couple of people get really pissed off that I wouldn't like tell them my secrets or whatever, but then I go follow up with them months later and they found out a completely different way to do it. And it becomes theirs. It's not just arts and crafts at that point. They're becoming an artist. And I used to get mad a little bit when people would copy and I still do if they don't give credit. Like it irritates me a little bit. But now you have to look at it like it's almost like a band as they're coming up. Most of them are covering songs. Not everyone's coming up with original right away. So as they progress, they start taking ideas from you and putting their own spin on it. So when people would ask me like, hey, can I do that? I'm like, yeah, just make your version of it though. Like don't copy it note for note, just kind of twist it to whatever you're, and then you see these guys start and it looks a lot like what you do or what somebody else does. And then each piece you start seeing them develop their own language, their own style.
So, okay. So let me ask you this. So you're obviously a big car guy. Like you pretty much daily a Demon, which I love, right? Best car ever, right?
Yeah. How many miles do you have in yours?
About 6,000.
That's not bad.
No, it's not bad. So,
most of my friends, 1,000 or something.
Nobody drive, dude. So nobody drives stuff. And that I have such a pet peeve on that. Like the House of Muscle Demon is just still going strong, gets driven all the time. But like, and this is, I found out with my old cars, like
cars ever. I love it.
Say again?
You have the most non-boring cars ever. I love it. I remember
Thanks, man.
you're at SEMA like years and years ago, and just looking at the plate and looking at the car and being like, yes, it was speaks to me.
Dude, you know what, man? I mean, I got through this whole hobby and then my career, honestly, a lot of times by just being naive about it. People would say, you can't drive that car there. And I go, oh, it's got 4 tires. Why can't I?
Right.
Like I just never understood you can't. That never registered with me. Right. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, why can't I? And
That's
so
why
I would just go do it.
That's why I wanted to drive that ACR cross country, because everyone's like, it's a race car. Never. I was like, dude, we used to drive Model T's cross country and dirt roads. Tell me I can't take a modern, even if it's basically a race car cross country. Come on.
Dude, we did that years ago. This is probably 10, 12 years ago. I remember we ran one lap of America. And at the time, like my car was my 68 Charger, like 440 big block, double pumper on it. And everybody was just like, you're going to run that in one lap. And I go, oh yeah. And we did. And we ran one lap. Yeah, of course we broke down, but like we raced every track. We finished the only 68 Charger in history to ever run and finish the event. And like, that was probably 40,000 miles ago on that car. You know what I mean? So it's like anybody who doesn't drive, like I always say, I'm like, why would you save it for the next owner? And like the only people that are getting my cars, I'll be dead because I'm not selling them. Like they're mine. Like, and that's the way I feel about it. Like if everybody's like, well, if you were to crash your Charger or your Daytona, would you get another one? I'm like, well, no, because they're not mine. Like those are mine. I don't know if that makes sense, but like,
yeah,
you know.
no, sure. I mean, I've still got that. So I didn't grow up a car guy. Like my dad, I was the oldest of 9 kids. My dad was when he was younger. Then he started having kids, and it was like there's no time for cars anymore. I helped my grandpa restore a few old cars, but like it wasn't a lifestyle or anything. It was kind of a job. And so I've always felt kind of like a poser. I walk through these car shows with, you know, all my artist friends that have grown up in the industry with their dads being in the industry, and they're like, oh yeah, that's the headlights off of 55, the fender off of 59. Yeah. Like I didn't get into cars until I was 18 or 19. I got his 94 Z28, and my dad had to help me do everything on it. Like I just, you know, and gradually I still don't like working on cars that much, but I love like I would rather weld and get paid for welding and then pay somebody to wrench. It's kind of happening a little differently now, because as I've done that, I found it's really hard to find somebody to do the work that you want to have done and do it right. Like it is such a difficult proposition. I've had just now, I have a 1970 Buick Electra, 455, 4-barrel convertible, deuce and a quarter. I got it from my grandpa. It was like I was going to restore this to all its glory, and then the shop it was at went and didn't tell me. So it's been sitting in storage for 4 years. And I hate it, but I gave it to a friend that I work with. And I'm like, the only thing I ask is because his brother teaches shop and does a lot of car rebuilds on the side. And I'm like, do whatever you want with it. But when it's done, if you go to sell it, I want first dibs. That's it. But it was hard, but I'm paying, you know, a car payment to keep it stored for, you know, so.
Well, I think that's part of it. Like, you know, I mean, like my Daytona's in your neck of the woods. Like it's at Kevin Wesley's shop right now. And we're doing the full red eye conversion with the 8-speed. And everybody's like, why would you do that? I'm like, why wouldn't you do that?
So gnarly.
Like, you know?
Really ask why? Like that seems like a rhetorical question.
Oh, dude. I mean, yeah, but you know, Mopar guys are tough. Like the old school Mopar guys are just like, why did you change that fastener? And those wheels don't fit. And that steering wheel is incorrect. And I'm not that guy. I'm a big, like somebody says that to me and I'm just like, you know what? FO, because I can't, like, is it yours? No, it's mine, which means I get to do whatever the fuck I want with this thing. And you have no say what. So I don't really give a shit if you don't like it because it makes me smile. Right.
I think people are becoming those guys are, I hate to say it, they're dying off, but the new breed is like the resto mod community is insane. Yeah. Like your cars that, I mean, I go to the top of the food chain, the stuff that like Jonathan Ward does. You've got a old Bronco, but it's got a brand new everything else. And, you know, you can't beat that. The style right now, I think we're probably towards a little bit the end of an era of an automotive golden age, like we had in the late 60s. Oh, that everyone's appreciated it. Like right now, design, power, efficiency, like it's bonkers. But there's still something about those early, the late 60s, even, you know, 40s, 50s. They each have their own aesthetic that is really something else. So when you can combine, you know, the best of whatever era you're in with each, it just, I don't know, it opens, like you can, a non-car guy could hop in that car, your red eye, and drive it cross country and never have an issue with it.
Right. So let me ask you, when you're doing your sculptures, right? I mean, you've got the demon behind you, you've got your ram and some other stuff. Like, what inspires you? Like, if somebody says, I have this idea, right? They'll give you like, I want a sculpture of this. Ultimately, it's your idea, it's your baby that's on there. What inspires you to make these things?
So that's the trick when you're doing a commission piece or you're doing something that you want to represent something, is the balance of what parts do you keep and what parts do you leave out? Like, what is the essential element of a car? Like, I did the sculpture of the ACR Viper. It's like, you've got to get all the aero in there, kind of like, even if it's just the illusion of the aero, whether the wings in the front, there's a certain shape it has to have. And the tricky part is early on, like I've got friends that will do like replica vehicles and they're super cool, but I like to put my own spin on it. Like even early on when there was one time and I'm like, you know, I'm going to measure everything out and try to do something to scale. It just didn't look right. Like it's all about getting it together, and the proportions aren't right, but they look right. If they look right, they are right. Like there's this game that you have to, I don't know. I think there's something the artists have that's not necessarily trained. It can be nurtured, where there's like a sixth sense sort of thing where you can kind of feel how something should look or how something is going to be perceived. My inspiration comes from just machinery. Like I love machinery. I love mechanical things. And then the trying to sort of give them soul, because I'm a huge believer that, you know, old tools have soul. Vehicles can. So you want to create these sculptures that aren't just models or a symbol or what they have something that speaks to you. So the trick is you look at a car like the demon. I did a demon sculpture. It's like, well, okay, got to be doing a wheelie. Like it just does, you know. And then the sort of flames and everything's kind of twisted because of the, you know, you want to envision that power. Or with motorcycles, it's, you know, what is the bike going to be used for? What style is it? You know, you try to get to know the person who's commissioning it a little bit even. I don't know. The thing is like inspiration comes and I don't have any control over it. It just happens. There's things you can do, whether it's watching a movie or going to a concert or whatever, that can inspire you. But so sometimes shit just pops into your head and you got to make it, you know, and every now and then it works out. Sometimes it works out accidentally. Like my buddy, Max Grundy, who's an artist out in California. He's like, sometimes the accidents are the best things that happen. Like you do this and then, you know, it's like, oh, that actually worked. I didn't mean for it to work, but it did. And then you kind of go on that tangent and work with that little thing. So it's hard to say. Sometimes it's even like I was saying, it's the people behind the machines, like whether it's the owner or, you know, the guy who designed the car or something like that, you know, what they were trying to get across, and you accentuate those kind of features, things like that.
Gotcha.
And then I've been doing, I really like the idea of man and machine, like perhaps the AI apocalypse won't be so bad. Like we can work together, kind of thing. And it stuck with me years ago. I was in, I think it was still when I had a Nextel flip phone. I was in the Sprint store and they had a Wired magazine there, and it was talking about using, and this was like I said, flip phone era years ago. they're talking about a chess program and the computer versus the grand champion. At the time, the computer couldn't beat the grand champion. But if you gave somebody who had a rudimentary knowledge of chess and the computer, they would whoop the grand champion because the computer didn't have to go through a infinity possibilities. The guy knew direction to. And I think we can have this future where it's not man versus machine, it's man and machine. So I've done these sculptures where it's like, I have one, it's a robot kickstarting an old knucklehead Harley.
Actually, yeah.
Like even in the future where these machines are, they still have this shared appreciation of the history of machinery. I've done a couple now where there was one, it was a ballerina dancing with a robot. Another recent one I did was it was like a tango. It was a feminine figure with a robot doing the tango, and I kind of play with that a little bit too.
That's awesome, dude. That's great. I mean, to be able to kind of put things in a little different perspective than a lot of people might not generally see, I think is pretty wild. And the fact that you know, you're giving this imagery out, and that's the other part, right? Like, and I think that's the greatest part of social media, is that you're not hiding anything. Like, you're putting your imagery out there to inspire everybody else. Like, anybody that goes to Brown Dog Welding, that goes to your personal Instagram page, they can see everything that you do. Yeah. And it really does. And as somebody who's not artistic at all, seeing those images for me gives me so many ideas that I use in other aspects of what I do. So, like, obviously I do production and things like that. And that it gives me idea. Like, if I see, like you said, the demon sculpture, right? Like, it's a demon. Of course it's got to be doing a wheelie. Of course there has to be a Christmas tree that it's going off. Of course it does. Right? But when you see it in a manner that's different, where it has been sculpted out and the car is coming up and it's a little cockeyed and twisted, you go, okay, now how do I, for me, I'm going, well, how do I put that on film? How do I shoot that? How do I get that angle so that I can put that still life that's made out of metal in motion on a camera?
It's literally the same thing, but in reverse. Like, I look at a film, a video that somebody did, and it's like, okay, how do I capture that in a stationary metal piece? It's literally exactly the same concept. I'm friends with a lot of the designers they like taking guys to different movie events, or we have great museums here, take them to a museum, and you never know what's going to kickstart something in somebody's brain to get them to come up with the next great design, you know?
Yeah, totally. So let me ask you this. So, because we're running almost an hour actually, which is crazy. What do you got coming down the pike next? What are you doing?
Well, right now things are sort of on a standstill because we had a plumbing disaster at our loft. So we've been kind of homeless since Christmas. I've been on the road the first 3 months of this year. I was in White Sands, New Mexico, and then in Aberdeen, Maryland. And I'm going next month to Sierra Vista for a month. So right now, because of that vehicle we're building, lots of road trips. So it's really hard to put anything in stone. I'm trying to set up, usually I do SEMA, and that takes away a couple of weeks just because of how the trip works. This year, I don't know that I'm going to do it, but we're going to take a couple of road trips. I'm trying to work out doing some fun stuff with a couple of brands. And if that doesn't work out, we'll just take my car or Darla's Jeep or whatever. Like to do a road to Montana, do another one to Maine. The sculptures, this sounds a little bit morbid, but obviously I'm a dog lover. I'm an animal lover. And then my dad passed away just over a year ago, like right when the pandemic was hitting, everything. Literally, he passed away the day before the state went on lockdown. So it's just been a really weird year. But I built an urn for him, and I've done urns before. I did one years ago for a family that lost their baby, and it was like a toy roadster kind of metal shape. And there's a feeling you get when you're doing a project like that for somebody, that it's like, okay, this is a legacy, this is permanent, this is more than whatever else. And I really like that responsibility. There was years ago, I did another crazy story. I did a snowmobile sculpture for this girl, and she was going to give it to her boyfriend. then I got a call from her boyfriend asking if I could get it done that week because she had passed away. And so they want to bury it was either she had passed away or her boyfriend had passed away. And I think one of her friends had contacted me, was like, can you get this done right away? I'm like, hell yes, because they wanted to bury it with him. So
wow,
there's a responsibility. And so recently somebody contacted me about doing an urn for their dog. They had a brown dog and thought it would be appropriate. And it's something that I'd like to do more of. I think that the people would like everyone goes nuts over their pets. So why not do something other than the ceramic vase? You know, you could have something that's much more personalized. So as morbid as that sounds, I kind of hope I can do some more of those.
I don't think that's morbid at all. I think that's fantastic, dude.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think it's something that, you know, that, like I said, I like that kind of responsibility. I'm working on a few other things. I've got an ashtray I'm making right now out of some giant bearing races that I got from places I'm probably not supposed to say. And like mixing copper and stainless and all these different things. And obviously I've got a few sculptures in my head that I'd like to do, but life is chaos. And it's like every now and then I'm so stressed out and I'm thinking, it's your own fault. Like you could make this all go away in a second. It just, you know. And I kind of feel like life has been, people say life is a roller coaster. For me, it's like a multiverse, because as soon as something really shitty happens, something amazing happens, and it's almost like it balances out. So life has been like that for the last few years. And it's just, you're trying to figure out if you want to settle into a routine or you just want the chaos to go on uninterrupted. And right now chaos is winning. So, you know,
so there you go.
I like to do more classes. I really enjoy doing the workshops. We have an opportunity, hopefully. There's a gentleman in our complex who works with inner city kids in Detroit. And he's like, would Josh like setting up welding workshops for these kids? And we're like, that's exactly what we've been wanting to do with Still Building America. It's just, like I said, life has been chaos the last couple of years. So I'm hoping to do something like that. I absolutely love teaching welding, and at any level, but it's really cool when you get somebody who's just learning. There's something really cool when you see that spark fly off and they get, yeah. I always joke that the first time I welded, so my father-in-law was a millwright instructor, but the guy that taught with him, we weren't supposed to touch a welder like our first week there. And he's like looking around like, Bob's not around. Let's go sneak out and fire up the generator. So I'm like in this weird in-between spot where it's like my father-in-law is telling us not to do this, but the dude's like, oh, like, okay. So the first arc I struck, I'm like, this is effing amazing. And somebody's like, you're on fire. I'm like, yeah, I know. And they're like, no, literally, you're on fire. And I looked down and my pants were on fire. So, and that was like that first spark. Like, this is me. This is what I want to do. I love it.
Dude, that's awesome. So what's the best way to if somebody wants a sculpture or somebody wants questions that has to ask you things, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
There's probably Josh at browndogwelding.com or Darla at browndogwelding.com. Sometimes she's better at answering emails than I am. Or if you send me a message through Welder Assassin, I'll probably get it. The Brown Dog Welding, I'm kind of mad because, you know, Mike Levine at Ford messaged me through that for this awesome sneak peek opportunity last week. And I didn't see it because I never checked that account. So I missed, like, God, just don't contact me through Brown Dog Welding at Instagram. But that's where, so like Welder Assassin is my life, everything. Brown Dog Welding is, I just have put pictures of welding and sculptures on there. So,
okay. Another
rambling answer to your question, but I'm on social media. Dude, Welding on Twitter, Facebook is Brown Dog Welding or Josh Welton. Either way, find me on there, but I'm around.
All right. Awesome. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on. I know it's taken a while to kind of get here, but thank you so much. Dude, this has been great. You got to come back on soon.
Oh, for sure. Anytime, man. I love it.
And when the Daytona's done, you're one of the few people that get to drive this thing, because
I've got some spots around here if you wanna light the tires up. I've got my little
so what we need to do is I want to get a dual photo of the Demon and the Daytona next to each other.
Heck yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
We can
that we got to do.
love it. Except
All
for
right, buddy.
tires right now. Just throwing that out there. I went to the cords on my last set and I'm like, oh, time to get new tires. Nitto doesn't have the 315 18-inch wheels for they had the 5D 5G2s they made. They don't even know when they're going to make them again.
Oh no. So what's the alternative?
I have so the 295 right now. I have 295 40s on it. But I couldn't do Nitto because they were out of those two. So I have Toyos on the back and Nittos on the front. They're decent tires, but you really would like to have that extra meat.
Yeah.
When you're picking it at 80 and it still wants to go sideways. So
yeah, know that feeling.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Well, dude, thanks again. And dude, we'll be in contact soon. I'll let you know as soon as this gets to air. But dude, thanks again, Josh,
awesome.
for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Heck yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Right,
I blessed.
Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast and hit that subscribe button. And we'll come to you every week.